Good evening. My name is Grafton Nunes. I am the Dean of the School of the Arts at Emerson College. Welcome to Emerson College and to the Cutler Majestic Theater, an exquisite Beaux-Arts opera house built in 1903, lovingly restored in 2003, and renowned today for presenting the best in concerts, plays, and lectures. Tonight we are gathered in this beautiful place to listen to the film artist David Lynch. The quantum physicist Dr. John Hagelin and the neuroscientist Dr. Fred Travis as they speak about consciousness, creativity, and the brain. You might ask, why would a College of Communication and the Arts sponsor such an event? The answer lies in our foundations as a liberal arts institution. We are not just dedicated to making media, we are committed to making meaning. In the School of the Arts, we certainly teach the techniques of art making, but we strive to do much more. Through the liberal arts, we give our students the tools to gain intellectual and emotional insight into what it means to be a creative and an engaged human being. Whether our students be artists or audiences, we hope to make them comfortable with being uncomfortable. We aim to teach them not to be disturbed by difference, but to celebrate difference. We are here to help our students develop the critical openness to quest and to question. We encourage them to express and to constantly recreate themselves. Recreation in the best sense of the word. And so we gather to listen to and to learn from this great filmmaker and these eminent scientists as they talk about the powerful intersection of the mind and the imagination. And to introduce our speakers, please welcome to the stage this evening's Master of Ceremonies, Bob Roth, Vice President of the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace. Bob Roth.
David Lynch is one of the most creative and fascinating artists of our time. David is the director of Eraserhead, The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, The Straight Story, and Mulholland Drive. He is currently directing his new film, Inland Empire. But David is not only creative as a filmmaker, he is also a painter, photographer, sculptor, furniture designer, composer of soundscapes, songwriter, author, and producer. David's numerous awards for filmmaking include Academy Award nominations for Best Director for Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, and Elephant Man, Best Director for Mulholland Drive from the Cannes International Film Festival and the LA Film Critics Association. And last year, The Guardian in the UK named David the best film director in the world for the past 40 years. David is here to answer questions about his filmmaking, but perhaps more importantly for him, he is here to talk about the source of his filmmaking, the source of his creativity, his own being. And he's here to talk about his new foundation, the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace, which David established to bring the stress-reducing, creativity-enhancing benefits of meditation to students here in the Boston area and to students all over America. David himself has been practicing transcendental meditation for 32 years, and he credits the continuous and remarkable flow, an unexpected flow of his creativity and innovation and success to his twice daily meditation practice. David will be joined on stage by John Hagelin, a Harvard-trained physicist and world authority in the area of unified quantum field theories. Dr. Hagelin's contributions in the field of particle physics and cosmology include some of the most cited references in the physical sciences. Dr. Hagelin is also responsible for the development of a highly successful grand unified field theory based on the superstring. Dr. Hagelin is my boss. He is the president of the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace, and many of you here tonight may recognize him from his featured role in the film, What the Bleep Do We Know? I would just like to say that David, all of us with the foundation, all of us and all the people in the Boston area are very honored that you're going to, I'm looking at him over there, that you and your fellow panelists will speak to us tonight about creativity, consciousness in the brain, and to answer our questions. Please welcome David Lynch and John Hagelin.
How you doing? Thank you very much. It's good to be here in Boston, and thank you very much for coming here tonight. Do you have any questions? And I'll try to answer them. Yes.
I've heard a lot about how you use music on the set during production, and I'm wondering, and of course your films are credited with really innovative use of sound and music. I'm wondering if you could talk more about your use of music during production.
Sometimes you hear a piece of music and it marries to a scene in the script. And so when you're shooting, I a lot of times will play that piece of music in the headphones along with listening to the dialogue. And hearing this music is just it's a verification that things are going in the right way. For instance, the right pace or the right lighting. It's just another tool to ensure that you're following the original idea and being true to it. So it's a good thing if you've got some music up front, if you play it, to see if the scene is working.
A lot of people, when I talk about your movies with them or show them your movies, often say things like, "I don't get it," and then they don't really want to talk about it after that.
Right.
I've heard that you often like to think about images and see what you can do with them from there without really necessarily thinking about things like, the plot or the deeper meaning first. And I know, like, from Mulholland Drive, for example, I've heard that it was actually initially it was conceived somewhat like Twin Peaks, where it was supposed to be a TV series, and it was sort of altered after it was clear that wouldn't happen. But in a situation like that, or even in a story that starts somewhere and then is supposed to be a movie in the first place, how do you respond to the idea that, it doesn't make sense, or, people don't understand? Like, what do you think about that, and what would you say to other people who maybe like making things that other people don't think make sense?
I think I love ideas. I like a story that's got some concrete, structure, but also holds abstractions. Life is filled with abstractions, and the way we make heads or tails of it is through intuition. And so people get used to a film that pretty much explains itself 100%, and they kind of turn off that beautiful thing of intuition when they're looking at a film that has some abstractions. And some people, on the other hand, love these abstractions, and it gives them room to dream. An abstraction, to me, is a thing that cinema can say. And it's so beautiful, for me anyway, to think about these pictures and sounds flowing along together in time, in a sequence, making a thing that can only really be said in cinema. It's not words, it's not just music, it's a whole bunch of things coming together and making a thing that didn't exist before. And that's what I really love about it.
Thank you.
And then to answer your question a little further, it's up to the people then, to find their own, interpretation. It doesn't really matter what I think. Every screening, no matter what, Even all the frames of the film are exactly the same, but there's no two screenings that are exactly the same. It's the viewer and the picture and sound, and it makes a circle, and it just goes like that. And so you just feel it and think it. That's kind of intuition, emotion, and thinking together, and come up, make it have a sense to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Pretty good.
It's good. Eraserhead is like one of the most intriguing films I think I've ever seen, and I think a lot of other people would agree. And there's a lot of mythology, if you will, surrounding the prop you used for the baby in that movie. I was wondering if you could explain that, if you're willing to at all.
I never talk about the baby.
Okay. All right. Can I ask another question then?
Sure thing.
Let me see. Yeah, she was talking about Mulholland Drive, and a lot of people criticize that movie. A lot of people like it because, it's hard to make sense of it, and they like to think about the meaning behind it. But a lot of other people criticize it because they say that it was supposed to be a 2-hour pilot for a movie, and the ending, which is so completely different from the rest of the movie, seems sort of tacked on at the last minute to sort of make everything else a dream. And a lot of people think that's kind of like, oh, well, he couldn't come up with another ending because it was supposed to be a series, so therefore it's incomprehensible. What do you say to that?
I say baloney.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Lynch, by conventional standards, I know you've only made one film which could be considered a giant spectacle, Dune. If you ever had a chance to make a film of that scale again, would you take it? I only ask because Dune is one of the most visually and orally beautiful films I've ever seen.
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't think I would probably take that. I might, but Dune for me was a huge failure. And because I didn't have Final Cut, and you all are film students, and so it's pretty much common sense that we should, as filmmakers, have Final Cut. And yet it's the last thing the studios want to give. And it's a real sadness, but it's a different world now with DV, and the cost of making a film is going way down, and you will have, so much more freedom and the ability to do things that you truly believe in, have your own voice, and have Final Cut. And, if I fall in love with something, I want to do it. So I'm not saying I would never do a big spectacle again, but the idea is not too pleasant to me right now. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I teach film, I make films. I would like to know, I'm not a meditator. What does meditation, can you say anything about how meditation connects to your creative process, or might help the creative process of my students or myself?
Yes, I can.
Will you?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Tonight's talk is consciousness, creativity, and the brain. And if you have a golf ball-sized consciousness, when you read a book, you'll have a golf ball-size understanding. When you look out, a golf ball-size awareness. And when you wake up in the morning, a golf ball-size wakefulness. But if you could expand that consciousness, then you read the book, more understanding. You look out, more awareness. And when you wake up, more wakefulness. It's consciousness. And there's an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness inside each one of us. And it's right at the source and base of mind, right at the source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi teaches a technique called transcendental meditation. It's a simple, easy, effortless technique, yet supremely profound, that allows any human being to dive within experiencing subtler levels of mind and intellect, and transcend and experience this ocean of pure consciousness. This pure consciousness is called by modern physics the unified field. It's at the base of all mind and all matter. And they now say, modern science says, all of matter, everything that is a thing, emerges from this field. And this field has qualities like bliss, intelligence, creativity, universal love, energy, peace. And it's not the intellectual understanding of this field, but the experiencing of it that does everything. You dive within and transcending, experiencing this field of pure consciousness, and you enliven it, you unfold it, it grows. And the final outcome of this growth of consciousness is called enlightenment. And enlightenment is the full potential of all of us human beings. And a side effect of enlivening this consciousness is negativity starts to recede. When I started meditating, I was filled with anxieties, filled with fears, kind of a depression and anger. And I took this anger out on my first wife, and after 2 weeks of meditation, she comes to me and she says, "What's going on?" And I was quiet for a moment because it could have been any number of things she might have been referring to. But I finally said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "This anger, where did it go?" And I didn't even realize it had lifted. Now, these negative things like anger and depression and sorrow, they're beautiful things in a story, but they're like a poison to the filmmaker. They're a poison to the painter. They're a poison to creativity. They're like a vice grip. If you are super depressed, you can't hardly get out of bed, let alone think ideas, have that creativity flowing. So it's money in the bank to get that beautiful consciousness growing, which is flowing creativity, the ability to catch ideas at a deeper level. Intuition grows. This field is a field of pure knowingness. You dive in there, you sort of just know how to go. You know how to solve solutions. It's like an ocean of solutions. And you can just feel this thing growing. But the ultimate thing for me is the enjoyment of the doing, the enjoyment of life grows huge. I love making films now more than ever before. Ideas flow more. Everybody has more fun on the set. Creativity flows. People look like friends and not like enemies. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's us. In Vedic science, this field of pure consciousness is called Atma, the self of us all. At that level, as Dr. John Hagelin would tell you, at that level of life, we are all one. We're one. Diversity up here, unity down below. It's a great thing for the filmmaker.
Thank you.
I would like to have a glass of water, if that's possible. Okay. Hey, Jay, bless you, man. This is Jay, my friend and assistant. It's really good. It's not quite as good as pure consciousness, but it's really good.
Hello.
How you doing?
Not bad. How are you?
Good.
Well, my name is Alex Harvey. I've been meditating for a while. I want to know if there was a moment where you realized the effect that pure consciousness had on your work.
Right from the very beginning. And like I said, I might have been, I think I had so many anxieties and fears And I felt those lifting, and bliss is a thing in this field, the unified field. Bliss, they say, is the sweetest nectar of life. Bliss is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual happiness. And you can vibrate with this bliss. And it's this happiness from within. They have a saying, true happiness isn't out there, true happiness lies within. And I always wondered, where is this within? And they don't say where it is, and then they don't even say how to get to it. This is the beauty of this technique. There's lots of forms of meditation, but with transcendental meditation, to me, the key is the word transcend, to dive all the way in. It's a huge realm between the surface of life and this fundamental pure consciousness, but it's there. And when you're in it, you know you're in it. It's familiar, but it's you. And right away, a happiness, but it's not like a goofball happiness. It's a thick beauty. It's a thick beauty to appreciate life and living. And why suffer? Suffering starts to go. And people say, well, you got to have anger. You got to have an edge, to create. You got to know about anger. You got to have energy. You got to have clarity to create. You got to be able to catch ideas. You got to be able to be strong enough to fight unbelievable pressure and stress and the whole thing in this world. That will lift, because this whole thing is tied to world peace, but it's going to be a better world, but it's still a very tough world. And this just gives you more and more and more ability to say, it just looks beautiful. It's way, 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 way better. And this happened right away.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, my name is Mike.
How you doing?
I just want to tell you first off, thank you for everything you ever done with all your films that changed my life. And the question I have is, I've heard with Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, when you give the person your script, you give them 1 page a day. I want to know, is that true? Do you write the whole script the whole time? Or then just give them 1 page a day, or do you write 1 page a day and then just give it to them?
No, but I don't know. Now, if you were going to be an actor in one scene, I'd give you the pages for that one scene. I may not give you the whole script. And you might say, well, yeah, but in order to do this character, I need to know where I fit in the whole thing. But you could talk to me about that, and instead of having the whole script. This is the internet world, and things just end up in the internet right away. Yeah. So I like to kind of play it close to the vest and not have things go out so much. And just talking with an actor and rehearsing and talking, it gets there, and everything is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi. Is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say that you're like my favorite filmmaker. I love your movies, and like open the world of cinema to me in a way that I could never imagined before. But my question is, I've heard that on set when you're directing actors and when you're, just going about the day of getting all the shots, you sort of do and say like strange, unusual things, like you might tell an actress, I like the way you did that, but more wind, or something like that. And I wonder if you could just speak about how you go about directing on set.
Okay. More wind means more mystery. And so you develop these little code things with certain actors or actresses. And it's a weird thing. I'm not so good with words. So when I'm rehearsing, the way the process works is the same way it works with all departments, because every element of the film is crucial so that the whole will hold together and work as a whole. So with acting, you start rehearsing, and the thing may be all over the place. And you have a rehearsal. Wherever it is. And then you talk. But the talking is talking that maybe doesn't make so much sense, but it does to me and whoever I'm talking to. And you can feel it making sense. And so the next time you rehearse, it may be here now. And then it might be here next time because of talking. And then the whole idea is to get each person that's helping you to go down the same track that you're going down. And you're going down that track based on these ideas that you fell in love with, and you try to stay true to those ideas. And so there's a lot of talking. At first, especially, it's all over the place, and then the talking, we're all going down the same track. And an actor, at a certain point in early rehearsals, catches the thing, and then they're rolling. And all their talent, as I said before, all their talent they can now, give on the right track.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christopher McEnany, and my question is that a lot of your films follow a nonlinear plot, and I wonder, do you have an idea that, like, when these ideas come to you, do they have a more normal, like, flow, and then you rearrange it to what you feel is the most interesting? Or
They
does it
come
to
like
you
that.
way?
They come like that. But well, the straight story I didn't write, but the straight story is completely linear. But there I fell in love with the emotion of that script. And that's another thing, a beautiful, beautiful thing about cinema. It's got the stuff for, emotion. And it's so tender, a little bit too much, but you can only go by this intuition. And there's no guarantee it's going to work for everyone afterwards, but you go by this intuition and you realize one or two more frames and it breaks it. One or two frames less and it doesn't work. It's emotion, and all these things have got to swim together and build and go in time to get a certain feeling. It's so much like music, but it reminds me of the story on The Elephant Man. There was this Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings I heard on the radio one day, and I fell in love with this thing for the last scene in the film. I was dying, and I asked Jonathan Sanger, the producer, to get it, and he came with 9 different records. And I listened to him, I said, no, that's not what I heard at all. And 8 of the 9 were completely wrong. And then I heard Andre Previn's version, and that was the one I heard. Same notes, the same notes, but the way he did it is so beautiful.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Oh, I'm told one more question.
Oh, I'm lucky. Okay. Yeah, that's good, because I had a few questions, and as I worked up, it whittled down to 1, so I'm fine. Okay. I heard somewhere, I don't know if this is true, that you've sworn off the medium of film itself, and that you're only going to be filming movies in video from now on. I was wondering if that was true, and if or if not, what do you think of the use of film in the future? Because I always felt it was like kind of an organic, beautiful thing. So I wanted to.
If you look at what people all over the world are taking still pictures with now, you sort of see what's going to happen. And I fell in love with DV working on short things for my website. And then I started thinking, and I did some tests of, you still have to go to film to show a film in the theater, but I did some tests from DV to film. And it looks not exactly like film, but it looks way better than I thought. And the film scratches, it gets dirty, it breaks. You have to go to the lab. You don't see what you've got for a couple of days. And it's completely dead, I think. I fell in love with DV. It's so much freedom. You have a 40-minute take instead of a 10-minute take. Lightweight, mobile, automatic focus. It's so beautiful. And it's a little bit different a feel, and the medium talks to you. So as you start seeing it, your mind starts seeing that this is good, and it's a new medium, and it's really beautiful.
So does this mean you'll never work with film again?
I don't think so. I think it's unfortunately a dinosaur.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be back in a minute, and now you'll hear from my great friend and one of the world's leading quantum physicists, Dr. John Hagelin.
David falls in love with the doing, David falls in love with the ideas, and David falls in love with the source of the ideas. We all know about the doing, we all know about the ideas. David established a foundation, the David Lynch Foundation for Consciousness-Based Education and World Peace, to bring the knowledge of the source of the ideas, of the being, not just the doing, but the being within each person. And David's foundation is bringing this knowledge and these programs of meditation to schools all over the country, schools from kids 10 years old all the way up to now a 2-year research study is going to be going on at American University, George Washington University in Georgetown with 500 students, partially funded by the David Lynch Foundation, to study the effects of meditation on brain and consciousness and creativity. The president of the David Lynch Foundation, most of you heard this, but some of you came in late, so I'd like to quickly reintroduce him, is Dr. John Hagelin, a world-renowned quantum physicist, educator, author, and science and public policy expert. Dr. Hagelin has conducted pioneering research at the European Center for Particle Physics and the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, and is responsible for the development of a highly successful grand unified field theory based on the superstring. His scientific contributions in the fields of electroweak unification, grand unification, supersymmetry, and cosmology include some of the most cited references in the physical sciences. Dr. Hagelin received his doctorate from Harvard University. He is currently director of the Institute of Science, Technology, and Public Policy and professor of physics at Maharishi University of Management, and he is establishing a much-needed University of World Peace in Washington, D.C. Would you please welcome Dr. John Hagelin.
Thank you very much. I normally am not afraid of public speaking, but following David Lynch is a different experience. He's got this $1 million coiffure, which makes some of us feel a little follically challenged. And what's underneath the coiffure is so incredible, such an artist, and so articulate in describing in such a poetic but lucid way these deep experiences of inner consciousness. It's not really much for me to say, except perhaps to shed some scientific light on what this experience is, which I'll try to do. Really, the experience of unity beneath life's surface diversity is an age-old experience, an understanding of every major tradition of knowledge on earth, every major spiritual tradition on earth. And in the last 25 years, particularly in the last 10, modern science, through its own systematic means of gaining knowledge, has probed deep into the structure of physical reality and also confirmed a fundamental unity at the basis of life's surface diversity. The conclusion of all this centuries of research simply is the universe is superficially complex, but fundamentally simple. The universe is superficially diverse, but fundamentally unified. And the understanding is that if we scratch deeply enough beneath the surface, beneath the cellular, molecular, atomic, nuclear, subnuclear, quarks and leptons, electroweak unified, grand unified, and super unified scale, millions upon millions of times more fundamental than the atomic nucleus, we ultimately do arrive at a field of indivisible wholeness or unity, a unified fountainhead of all the diverse laws of nature that uphold the universe at every level, all the particles that fill the universe and comprise our bodies, all the forces that make the particles move, all the particles and forces. The entire universe is understood today as various vibrational modes, vibrational states of a universal field of existence, field of unity, field of infinite energy density, infinite dynamism. This universal source of the laws of nature, the source of all order displayed throughout the universe, is the origin of universes and percolates universes like ginger ale percolates effervescent bubbles. Most of these universes are duds, but some of them undergo exponential inflation and expansion and are populated by galaxies and stars and presumably people. We are the occupants of one such universe. So it is a huge reality, this ocean of existence, the field of unity at the basis of life's diversity. Now, the comprehension of this unity, it turns out, is not the sole province of theoretical physicists with their impressive empirical and theoretical means, mathematical means, but it is an age-old experience of life and a prized experience in every major tradition on earth. Today, this experience of pure consciousness or unbounded awareness at the source of thought has become a major study of modern scientific research in the fields of physiology and psychology. This experience of unity within turns out to be a fourth major state of consciousness, distinct from waking, dreaming, or sleeping. It has its own subjective reality, we've heard about that, and its own objective reality. For one thing, the body gains a state of rest several times deeper than sleep. The breath is barely moving because the mind is completely still. But the brain itself is transformed markedly, particularly in the direction of what's called global EEG coherence. We're going to see an incredible demonstration of this live. A very brave student is going to come up and meditate for us for a couple of minutes, wired to a brain encephalogram, and we're going to see underneath the hood and find out what's going on inside the meditating brain. It's fascinating. But the hallmark of that brain transformation is one of coherence. Now, you know how the brain encephalogram works? Different leads measuring electrical activity at different points on the scalp, the frontal and occipital lobes, the left and right hemispheres. I don't know if any of you have ever seen your own brain encephalogram, your own EEG. It's depressing. All the different areas of the mind and personality seem to be completely uncoordinated. It's very much mathematically like an orchestra. Prior to the emergence of the conductor, and all the musicians are warming up their instruments, sawing back and forth, creating a discordant cacophony of sound. That's what the brain looks like, as you'll see in a moment. Suddenly the conductor comes, raises the baton, and this cacophony turns into flowing music. It is an extremely striking feature, signature of the meditating mind. The so-called meditating state, or spiritual experience, or holistic experience, or Atma Chaitana, self-consciousness, or whatever it may be called in different traditions. Now, as an educator, let me just quickly say that this already constitutes an educational discovery of the foremost magnitude. And the reason it is because orderly brain functioning correlates with rising IQ, intelligence, increased creativity, improved memory and learning ability, academic performance, moral reasoning, psychological stability, emotional maturity, alertness, reaction time. Everything good about the brain depends on its orderly functioning. And now, orderliness of brain functioning can be systematically developed in students of any age just by exposing human awareness to the source of thought, this state of unbounded awareness within. And that's a complete transformation of what has been the common understanding of human potential, which has been bleak. The story has been that at age 16 or 17, we've peaked. From there on, intelligence begins a slow and steady decline. Gray matter starts to shrink quickly. Now, when you get to be my age, we say that, well, we make up for that through our experience and our wisdom and maturity. It's still a bleak view of human potential and wrong. The human brain, as we'll see in a moment, is so plastic, so malleable, continuously forging new connections. It has the capability of developing in intelligence and creativity and self-esteem and inner strength and bliss throughout life. So it's really remarkable what happens when you take something like meditation and put it into education and watch the students of any age grow in intelligence, brightness, alertness, performance, happiness. For this reason alone, I think This is the missing element in education. But I want to put this experience in a different context. This field of pure consciousness is not foreign from any of us. We may not experience it directly, but it is our own subjectivity. It is our consciousness, left alone finally for a moment to experience its own nature. And what I mean by that is the problem with waking consciousness, where we live our lives, is that the structure of waking experience is always a process of awareness of something, some little thing, in contrast to the nature of the knower, which is cosmic, universal, unbounded creativity, bliss. But the consciousness is forsaken, in a sense, sacrificed for the objects of experience. And the moment you get up in the morning, you hear the alarm, you realize you're late for school, late for class, it's one experience after another at the expense of the experiencer. So although this experience of consciousness is intimately familiar on one sense, it's really never or rarely experienced on another sense. And that consciousness is the one thing in our life that never changes. It's the one thing that's been there since infancy that has never changed and allows us to believe correctly that we're the same person today, ultimately, than we were, even though our bodies have changed for the worse. Our friends have changed, our environments have changed, our beliefs have changed, our professions have changed, our spouses have changed, or whatever. Everything changes but that. And that, unfortunately, is the most fundamental of experiences and tragically missed. That's what meditation is for. That's why it has been treasured throughout the ages, even though today in the world I think meditation is misunderstood a lot and many of the techniques just aren't that effective in actually reaching that goal. So the experience of the self is sometimes called self-realization, liberation, enlightenment, because it is so huge and fundamentally contented that it's a sacrifice to lose it for the sake of spinach or okra or mashed potatoes or whatever it is we're eating at the moment that really becomes our experience of life. Get it back. Now, the problem and the solution are pretty simple. Education focuses human comprehension very sharply, very skillfully. We become very proficient at doing whatever it is we specialize in doing. By the time you become a master's student, you realize you're starting to learn more and more about less and less. At the doctoral level, you've become the world's greatest expert in nothing. My doctoral thesis was called Weak Mass Mixing, CP Violation, and the Decay of B-Quark Mesons. How many have read it? Almost everybody. It's a wonderful thing. It's the specialization is not the evil. It's the lack of a few moments and a little bit of training to allow the attention to withdraw from those narrow confines of perception, to begin to reacquaint itself with its own nature, to expand until comprehension becomes suddenly unbounded. And then you become familiar with the eternity, the non-changing, invincible core of yourself, which brings great strength, great creativity, as David said really more eloquently than anyone. What I'd like to do for a moment is surrender the microphone, which I'm always reluctant to do, but I will do for a good reason. Dr. Fred Travis is certainly one of the most published and certainly greatest experts on meditation and the brain. He's going to describe a little bit about what goes on in your brain during the day, typically during education also, and what happens in contrast when you meditate. And assisting Fred Travis will be, again, this brave volunteer, Shane Zisman, who has come to show us what happens in his brain. So let's welcome for a moment Professor Fred Travis.
If I only had a brain. Mr. Lynch, Dr. Hagelin gave a very compelling image of a unified field, the basis of our thought, the basis of our behavior. And these compelling images have concrete reality in the functioning of our brain. Because the quality of the functioning of your brain determines the quality of the functioning of your mind. If you want a creative mind, you need a creative brain. If you want a calm, alert mind, you need a restful, alert brain. This relationship goes the other way as well. The brain not only generates experience, but each experience we have changes the brain. I want to spend a few moments on this. Every time you see something, you hear something, the words now going into your ears are creating this cascade of electrical activity over your brain. Individual neuron by individual neuron is sending the information, and you have they're as if connecting hands. We have this delicate network over your brain, and that's what lets you see. That's what lets you decide. And every time you have an experience, that network gets a little stronger. Your brain is a river. It's not a rock. Indeed, 70% of the connections between your brain cells change every day. What we have here is an example of two dendrites. Dendrites are where one cell takes in information. And these little bumps that you see here are called dendritic spines. This is where one neuron is communicating with this neuron. Now, you have 100 billion neurons in your brain. Each one gets input from about 10,000 other neurons every second. You can imagine getting 10,000 phone calls a second and trying to integrate it together into one coherent output. That's the life of your brain cells. And what they do, I guess, for self-preservation is they're constantly changing. They're creating connections, losing connections. What we'll be doing here is showing you a movie, 8 successive slides, which shows the connections in this one area over 8 successive days. So everyone can see? Yeah, here we go. Wow, did you see that? Yeah, we'll show you again. This is what happened. Your brain is incredibly plastic. You notice the bumps, the spines coming out here and then disappearing again. This is what's happening every day. This is what's happening when you play golf and you work on getting that strong, powerful drive. You're actually creating specific networks in your brain, and you're working them so they become very strong. We have some experiment here that was done with a chimpanzee that shows the result of continual experience. And all they did is they just touched the fingertips of the chimpanzee 20, 30 minutes twice a day. And so here we have the experiment. It's a very benign experiment. I'm sure the chimpanzee loved it. And what they did is they looked at the brain here, which responded to when the fingertips were touched. And they did this for about 3 months. And notice these areas, 3D and 2D are the notation for the second and third fingertip. Notice what happened after 3 months. Now, can you see that? Look at this. What's happened is whenever you have an experience, you devote more of your brain to processing that. And so when you get something, be it academic or sports or music or a thought, it's just that connection is now strong. Now, an important point here is all experiences change the brain. So when you're in a college class and you learn some fact, you've changed the brain. But also the whole college's experience is affecting the brain. Students are often under great pressure. They're often overtired, and this also changes the brain. When you're under high stress and fatigue, what happens is something called downshifting. Downshifting. You shift down to a more primitive style of functioning where the back part of your brain here, which is your concrete sensory area, talks to the motor system, and that's it. You're in a more of a stimulus response mode. Someone comes up and says, "Your hair doesn't look very good today," and you get really angry at them. You don't have to get angry at them. They may be making a joke. What's happening is under stress and fatigue, or maybe your hair doesn't look good. Some people don't have to worry about it. Under stress, under fatigue, what happens is this front part of the brain here. This is the CEO of the brain. This is where David Lynch is in your brain. This is the director. All other parts of the brain send their information to the front. It gets integrated. It's sent back out. Under high stress, these connections are not used. And when you actually have connections of this part of the brain and someone comes up and makes a comment about your hair, you say, oh, you didn't get a good sleep last night, or it's a joke, or he thinks I'm somebody else. You're not responding to the surface value of that relationship. You can see more fundamental to it. Now, what does happen over time under high stress and fatigue is this area, the CEO of the brain, is just not involved in usual experience. And that's what this picture is of. These are people lying down. This is their spinal cord, so their feet are coming out at you. You're looking up at the top of their brain. This is where the eyes are, and these are both during eyes closed rest. And what we're looking at is brain metabolic rate. Now, this Swiss cheese you see over here, they're not really holes here, but these are areas, these are functional lesions. That is, these parts of the brain are not involved in whatever you're doing. What this means is that you can, and this is, by the way, a very violent individual. It's a criminal. It's not a college student. But high drinking, high stress, mental stress, physical stress results in this. The brain is constantly being rewired. So you may be wondering what can strengthen these frontal connections, and transcending does this. It actually directly exercises the frontal area. It makes it alive. It connects it with the other parts of the brain. When you meditate, you build up your CEO. You make connections to that part of the brain. So let us look at Shane Zisman's brain. What we have here, let's give a hand to Shane. What we have here is a blue stretch cap. In the blue stretch cap are specific sensors, and they're taking the electrical activity of the brain. What we see on the screen is the ongoing electrical activity. This line is what's happening right now. And now these big peaks here are when he blinks. Can you blink, Shane? There we go. Thank you. So this is the left front, this is the right front, and these are the ones in between. Now, we're seeing his brain in Technicolor, but his brain's not really functioning in Technicolor. But here we have a brain laughing. So what we'll do is we'll bring up one sensor, and we'll just look at this. We'll first bring up one sensor in the front, and we'll have him sit with eyes open, eyes closed, so you can get a feeling for how the brain waves are changing. Then we'll have him meditate, and you can just see the difference then. Now, this is what the brain looks like when you're looking out at 1,200 people looking at you. The brain is very active. It's processing all these shapes, people, etc., the lights. And so you see this very fast activity here. This is 1 second, so this is about a 20 cycles per second wave. It's called beta activity. And this is what happens when the brain is actually processing. Many different parts of the brain are working very quickly, but they're not in coordination, so they don't line up. Let's get a second channel here. This channel will be in the back. And now, Shane, you can close your eyes. Now, noticing this very rhythmical activity, it's primarily in the back here. See this? This is called alpha activity. The back part of your brain is your visual center. Everything falling on your eyes streams to the back, and it just gets it completely revved up and is processing it. Lights, colors, movement, edges. You close your eyes, and that part of the brain can rest. And so this is resting rhythm of the cortex. This is the brain which is a restful but awake. Restful alertness, pure wakefulness. Now, Shane has been meditating since he was 5. Typically, when people just close their eyes, you don't see alpha activity in the front, as we do with Shane. This is remember what the front is? CEO. Thank you very much. It's very gratifying when you pick up the main points. This is the CEO. The CEO is always working, even when your eyes are closed. Self-talk, planning, analysis, it's always going on. this typically doesn't rest. This is the mental chatter that goes on in your brain. During the process of transcending, we see more of this in the front of the brain as well. Now, seeing this in a person just sitting with eyes closed is something that happens when someone has been meditating for a long time, and that is the pattern of meditation begins to be more a natural part of how their brain functions. Total brain functioning and that experience which Mr. Lynch, Dr. Hagelin have been describing of wakefulness, of bliss, of unboundedness, of self-sufficiency, of energy, all of that becomes available for whatever you're doing. Okay, so now we'll ask Shane to begin transcendental meditation. And what we see here is quite remarkable. You don't typically see this. If there's any EEG people in the audience, I'm sure you're saying, where is that coming from? This very high amplitude alpha activity in the front of the brain, and notice how it's tracking what's in the back of the brain. See, it's going up and down here, and the same way it's going up and down in the back, here as well. The whole brain is as if coming into sync, into single unity of functioning, total brain functioning. And this is underlying that experience of wakefulness, of alertness. And notice also how it's seen throughout this whole record, this whole 8 seconds. This is the experience, this is the brain state that's happening when you meditate. Okay, we'll let Shane meditate for a few minutes more, and then we'll go on. Now you notice this cycling here. There's much more of this global alpha. Here it goes away, here it comes back again. The whole process is very dynamic, with the mind settling down, coming back out, settling down. You become very familiar with that whole level of life. So now what we'll do is we'll ask Shane to stop meditating, sit easily for a minute or so, and then open his eyes. So the point I hoped you could see is that with TM practice, something is happening quite remarkable. That part of the brain which typically is always active, where we always have this very fast activity, as we see now as Shane's coming out of meditation, it can be restful, it can be alert. The whole brain can be functioning as one, total brain functioning. And since you're constantly creating and recreating your brain circuits, this experience helps to create a new type of circuit. What will your brain be like when you graduate? We've created a brain integration report card to try to quantify that. This report card is asking, what is the impact of your total college experience? The impact of the grades, of the skills you'll learn, of creating some local circuits of coherence in your brain, but what about that underlying level of wholeness, of wakefulness? The total brain functioning complements your academic report card. So I'd like to leave you with one thought. This is going back to the Wizard of Oz motif. Here we have the Wizard of Oz rewarding to this scarecrow. Remember what the scarecrow wanted? He wanted a brain. And remember what he did? He sacrificed himself, being burned to death and brought off by the monkeys, and the straw being torn off, all of that for a brain. And look what he gets. A piece of paper. So what I say to you is, don't be content with just getting a piece of paper from your college degree. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. I'm going to invite David up to answer more questions on meditation and his foundation for consciousness-based education and world peace. But in case that went by pretty fast, I've been looking at brainwave activity for many, many years in the context of our Brain Research Institute and the Institute for Brain Consciousness and Cognition. That experience of the front and left, frontal and occipital lobes of the brain, and the entire brain, in fact, coming into profound coherence is completely unique to this experience of unbounded awareness. It may even explain why awareness can be so subjectively localized when this little part of the brain is not coordinated with this part or any other part, and the experience of expansion of comprehension and unbounded awareness when the whole brain functions in sync. So it's an extraordinary result which you might find glimpses of in long-term Zen meditators. There are other practices that lead to this type of activity, but not many, and usually after a long time. After about 4 months of regular practice of transcendental meditation, this skill in gaining unbounded awareness and experiencing pure creativity is completely sound, completely solid. What happens after that is just this experience of unbounded awareness, pure consciousness within becomes more stable, so that during the depth of sleep, or dynamic dreaming, or dynamic activity, or even anesthesia, one is never lost to the continuum of experience of one's unbounded inner nature. And with that comes a sense of tremendous invincibility and strength. The second half of the David Lynch Foundation is for consciousness-based education and world peace. And this is a great, great goal of David Lynch's. It's not a golf ball-sized idea. It's a big idea. And it's a very simple approach. It's hard to have world peace without individuals at peace. It's hard to have a green forest without green trees. If there is a reservoir of unity and peace within, let people have that experience and start to enliven peace and radiate peace like a lit bulb radiates light. And that's a really important part of the David Lynch Foundation. That's why we're so excited about creating large numbers of people who can access that experience and training lots of people to meditate. And that's why we're really excited about the Washington, D.C. research project at American University, et cetera, because immediately we'll have at least 500 students and then soon a couple of thousand students contributing some peace to a city that is not peaceful. And what's important is there is a scientifically documented, extensively documented, spillover effect of meditation. We inevitably have effect on our friends, our loved ones, if enough people are involved in the whole educational atmosphere of a campus or even a city, even a country. So the spillover effect is very important. If we had 5 more hours, we can talk about the mechanisms with which we touch one another, affect one another, even at large distances. But it ultimately has to do with the fact that in our core consciousness, we are one. Consciousness is a field. And an influence here does propagate like a radio wave, essentially, throughout a social environment and brings peace, just like panic can spread through a room, or panic can spread through a city. Peace and calm and unity can spread through a city, a community, a nation. If the decision makers in Washington, D.C. are making political choices based on an atmosphere of fear and tension, that's the sort of policy we get. Whether it has to do with nuclear proliferation, whether it has to do with global warming, whether it has to do with issues of war and peace, that's the sort of policy we're getting. So if we can't get George W. Bush, for example, to meditate, I would like to surround him in a city which is essentially inoculated against this acute narrowness of comprehension and put, excuse me, create an environment there in which better, more life-supporting, life-nourishing decisions get made for the world. But Washington, D.C. is not the only stressed city, and those aren't the only students in the world who want to taste this wonderful experience of growing consciousness. So David Lynch has created a big foundation with a big goal to be sure that all schools, 5th grade to PhD, anyone who wants this experience can have it easily. In American University, for example, this is now a 4-credit course. and student financial aid and all the various aids that the university can bring to bear on teaching this technique is being brought to bear. I want to thank David Lynch very much for that and bringing this experience to more and more people all over the world, and invite David back to answer questions on meditation and his goals and his foundation. David Lynch.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Well, we'll go home. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jen Morrow.
How you doing?
You and your foundation have discussed the effects that transcendental meditation can have on the average college brain, for example, but what about people who aren't starting from a clean piece of paper, but from a blotted piece of paper? For example, people who have depression or mental disabilities or attention deficit disorder. What do you recommend? Will it work on someone, for example, who can barely concentrate long enough to...
You bet it will. And they're doing studies on that. And Serena, I wish Serena was here, but Dr. John Hagelin knows more about those studies than I do, but it's a holistic experience. So when you hear a word, oh, it's holistic and like this, it's a holistic experience, the field of unity. And so it improves all avenues of life. And it's working on all kinds of learning disorders. And these days, kids are getting stressed, and many of these things are coming out at an earlier and earlier age. And those people are being researched as well. And it just turns things around. There's a guy, Doc Rutherford, in Washington, D.C. He's introduced transcendental meditation into 3 schools. The first time, the school was filled with violence. There were, shootings, suicides, the whole thing that we all know about. He says, I get my staff meditating, I get the teachers meditating, get the students meditating, and watch it all turn around. There's another school in Detroit, the Ataki School. It was on NBC. Introduced transcendental meditation 8 or 9 years ago, and the kids meditate 10 minutes in the morning together, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and it turned the thing around. The school is a blissful school, and those kids are going out and getting way success. It's a thing that works.
Hi, Mr. Lynch.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I thought Blue Velvet was really cool, by the way.
Bless your heart.
My question is, what words might you say to someone, to the individuals who are so overwhelmed by feelings of negativity and skepticism, who are being introduced to these new ideas and need to sort of consider a new path to take?
Skepticism is very good. There's so many con artists in the world. You should be skeptical, but you shouldn't be skeptical of something after you look into it that is good. If the skepticism shouldn't keep you from something good. Ask questions, check it out, look at research, talk to someone who's done it, and when I don't know quite how it happened. I used to think meditation was, a waste of time. I didn't even really want to know about it. Suddenly, I became very interested in meditation. I'd hear this phrase within, I'd hear the word enlightenment. I started thinking about it. Maybe this meditation thing is some way to go and unfold that. So I didn't know. And when I went down to learn transcendental meditation, I knew I wanted that, but I didn't know what it was. I had doubts. What could this be? And I went and I met the teacher who was going to teach me, and I liked her very much. She looked like Doris Day. And she taught me this technique. She gave me a mantra, which is a sound, vibration, thought. You don't meditate on the meaning of it, but it's a very specific sound, vibration, thought. And she took me into a little quiet room to have my first meditation. I sit down, close my eyes, start this mantra, and it was like I was in an elevator and they cut the cable. Boom! Into bliss. And I say this word unique should be saved for that experience. So blissful, so deep, so kind of wide, and it's so much just like it's an experience that I really wanted. I wanted it. And it's not like you have to meditate every day. You want to meditate every day. But so much comes out. Why would you give that up? And if it leads to the full potential, if it leads to enlightenment, why would you not want that? But it's up to the individual. And it's just that kind of a thing. And that's my experience of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Lynch.
Good evening.
I feel privileged that I get to teach a class of 6th to 8th graders photography as an after-school program at Umadamarns Middle School in East Boston. I was wondering if there's any way to factor in, I should probably give you this. The school is known for having a lot of violence. It's the reason why the after-school program called Citizen Schools was started was in order to cure a lot of this. And one of the things, listening to you, I was wondering, is there any small exercise that could be done, perhaps in the beginning of a class, at the end of a class? It's only a 90-minute period, but that could start this with them.
I would love to fund the learning of transcendental meditation for the whole school. And then you see it going. Then you see the violence going, and you see people becoming friends. You see people coming to school happy, and you see grades improve, a lot of creativity, the photos change, they're going deeper into the photography, all kinds of things like this. But you could, if anybody is interested in these things, you could fill out that form that you have, and we stay in touch with email and see what we can make happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really love film, and I love catching ideas, and I love my transcendental meditation. I love enlivening unity, and I think the enlivening of unity brings, a better and better life. Maybe enlightenment is far away, but they say when you walk toward the light, with every step, things get brighter. Every day, for me, gets better and better. And enlivening unity in the world will bring peace on earth. So I say peace and good night to all of you. Thank you very much.
He disappeared. David loves his filmmaking. David loves his ideas. For the first time in 32 years, David who's a very private person, is sharing with all of us that tool that he uses to unfold that font of creativity and innovation and ideas. We're very grateful for David for what he's doing, his foundation. If you're interested in how meditation has been used in schools in inner cities for ADHD all across the country, davidlynchfoundation.com. It's a beautiful website that will tell you more about it. I would like to thank again our host, Emerson College, an absolutely wonderful evening. Dean Grafton Nunes, the Dean of the School of the Arts at Emerson, just a remarkable individual. I'd also like to thank all the students who participated in putting this together. I'd also like to thank Kingsley Brooks and Mr. Alan Rosenfield, who helped support this travel here for the David Lynch Foundation. And if you did not receive this DVD of David speaking about some of these same topics and something from John Hagelin, please pick it up on the way out the door. And finally, David asked, he wants to know who came. He wants to be able to email you and tell you news of his foundation. Please fill out this if you wish, and hand it out, turn it in when you go out the door. Again, thank you very much. This was an absolutely great evening.